What do I know about Tremors? Kevin Bacon, big old snake worm things, the dad from Summer Catch, the desert. That's really about it. It's supposed to be good, I think. There's like 4 or 5 of these now at some point, I want to say. But yeah. Tremors. Let's do it. Released in 1990, Tremors, directed by Ron Underwood as his first theatrically released film, starred actors such as Fred Ward, Kevin Bacon, Victor Wong, and Reba McEntire. This film has a score of 85% on Rotten Tomatoes and brings fantastic practical effects, hilarious one-liners, and of course, giant worms. And my guest today is my good friend, founder and host of Flick and Reel Fancast, and he's a huge fan of Tremors. I'm super excited to have as my very first guest on my very first episode of You've Never Seen It, Jesse Swift. What's up, Jesse?
I am doing so good, and I'm very excited to be talking about this movie, and I love that you're sharing information with me that I didn't know. Like 85% on Rotten Tomatoes has me ecstatic. You don't know how often I go to Rotten Tomatoes and find nothing but heartbreak. So I'm glad they got something right.
I was hoping... I literally thought that I was going to go on there and it was going to be super low and I could use the whole Rotten Tomatoes was wrong, but that's not this podcast because I love that podcast. Shout out Mark Ellis. Because it's so good. But then when I saw it was 85%, I was like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes was actually right about something, which still blew my mind knowing when this movie came out that there were that many critics who thought it was
showing
good.
Your hand. You said that they were right. So we already know Allison's going to give this movie a positive review. Oh, yes.
Oh, for sure. No, I had so much fun. So when I started this project and I made my list of movies, you had you looked through it briefly, if anything. But then you started listing things like, have you seen this? Have you seen that? And I was like, no, but I'm doing that with this person. No, I'm doing that with this other person. And then I felt like when you hit Tremors and I said, no, I haven't seen it, you very ecstatically exclaimed,
that's the one.
This is it. This is the one.
Well, I feel
so I have to know why. Like, what is it about this movie that you were so offended that I'd never seen it?
There's a multitude of things, but I think part of it is I'm not going to say the black sheep, but kind of the oddball in my family, being the one that is so avidly obsessed with film, cinema, movies, and I mean, especially things in the comic book and nerd genre. But my dad would occasionally watch movies with me, but it was kind of rare. There wasn't many movies that he was into. Like, he wasn't as into Star Wars. I watched Princess Bride with my sisters and my mom. Like, that's how it was. Most movies I watched was my sisters and my mom. But my dad would watch Back to the Future with me. He would watch Indiana Jones, and he would watch Tremors. And Tremors was one of the things that I don't remember what I was doing, but I was upstairs doing something. I was still pretty young, maybe 12, 13. My dad said, come on downstairs. There's a movie starting. I want you to watch it. And it was my introduction to Tremors. And then it became a special thing for me. And I think a couple birthdays later, I bought what was called the Tremors Attack Pack. And it was the first 4 films, the only 4 films at that point. And it wasn't until years later I actually found out that 2, 3, and 4 were all straight to home video. I was like, oh, I thought they released at least a couple of those theatrically. No.
How excited were you when I told you that I was now sitting down to watch Tremors 2, and we also get to talk about that?
I figured good sign because you didn't have to. That had to be just fully from curiosity. You sure you did not? I did not.
To be fair, you did not. But to be fair, as soon as I said I had to watch Tremors, the first thing my husband said was, then we can watch Tremors 2, right? Like, that's what we can do.
Aftershock.
So...
Tremors 2 Aftershock, right?
Yeah. He immediately went on.
So it's I think the second one's called Aftershock. I think the third one's Back to Perfection, and I cannot remember what Tremors 4's
Yes.
subtitle is.
Hmm.
But anyways,
Well, it's a good thing we can IMDb these things. Am I right? No, my Frank went on Amazon immediately after we I told him I was going to be doing Tremors with you, and he immediately looked to see and found that Tremors 2 was was available on sale and immediately ordered it. So next
you
Amazon
guys should
primed
have
it to our
got me a
house.
backpack. There's Tremors packs. You could have just got the whole collection. What are you doing?
There's
Hour.
one called, so Back to Perfection is number 3. There is Tremors A Cold Day in Hell.
That's 5 or 6.
Okay. Um
Yeah.
you know what? There's many of these. I am learning. How many of these are there? Tremors 5 is called Bloodlines.
Yep, I think
Uh
Bloodlines was the last one. I haven't seen 6. I watched 5, so I've seen 5 of 6.
okay. Okay.
Michael Gross is in all of them. I was gonna say
He's
it's Burt
so
Gummer.
fun.
He's my favorite character by far.
He's
I
so
was gonna
fun.
say he's in all of them as Burt Gummer, but that's not true because the 4th one takes place in the Old West, and he plays Hiram Gummer, Burt Gummer's great grandfather that
Perfect.
helped found Perfection, which back then was called Rejection, Nevada, before they renamed it. But that's a whole thing. I'll let you get to that movie.
That's amazing. And kind of going back a little bit more, just talking about movies in general, where do you think you got your love for film, and what is it about movies that keeps you just like so engrossed in them and having these favorite movies?
Sorry, did you hear any of that?
Is there
My cat is right
I
now
heard a
staring
cat.
out the window, just screaming like. Sorry.
It's like, this is my life.
So my passion for movies.
You're good.
So I think, honestly, part of it, I mean, movies were constantly on. It was like the one thing everyone would do as family. People bring everyone in and watch something on the TV or watch shows and stuff. So it was a loose part of gathering the family together. But then around the early 2000s, when I was very young, very impressionable, to date myself a little bit, so I'm talking about 7, 8, 9 years old, is when things like
Jesus Christ.
Spider-Man, X-Men, stuff like that started rolling around in live action. And I grew up in the 90s with the like Spider-Man cartoon, the X-Men cartoon, stuff like that. So I was like, get to see my heroes like come to the big screen, come to real life. And I just started getting so excited to go to the theater and to watch movies. And I started watching them on repeat. I saw, like, was burning through the X-Men 2 disc. And I think it wasn't really until maybe around 18, 19, getting into 20, that I started just liking film. And I started just looking for reasons to go to the theater. And that grew into like the last 5 years where it's been an obsession and a passion. And I've been running podcasts, doing a whole lot of reviews, and movies really became my life. I met my wife at a movie theater. Like, it has been completely central to my adulthood.
That.
Yeah, she was supposed
so
to be
cool.
training me on my second day of work, and we were both like, hey, you are attractive and you have good taste in movies. That's all I needed to know.
That's so cool. Oh, that's amazing. I did not know that about you and your lovely wife, who I adore so much.
She is adorable.
She really is. She's the best. So getting back into Tremors, and again, how much you love this movie, how often do you find yourself recommending this movie to people?
I have to know you a little bit, because it is
Okay.
it is a particular kind of like camp, and it's fun, but it's silly, and it falls under that category that, you know, we like to call like horror-comedy. You know, I think where like you're laughing a little bit, but it's a monster movie. It's a creature feature. So if that's just not going to work for you, or doesn't fall in line with your tastes, then I have a hard time recommending it. But if I think you have quality tastes and enjoy having a little bit of fun watching things that are maybe a little dated, but definitely classic. Then I think put it this way: if I recommend Tremors to you, call that a an endorsement of your character.
Which clearly I have great character because you very eagerly asked me to watch this and talk about it with you. No, it makes sense. I think I feel like everyone has kind of that disclaimer movie. You know, we kind of it gets talked about with other things. Is it's one of those where you recommend it, but for certain people you have to say, look, this is one of my favorite movies, but
Yeah.
it's not what you're thinking it's going to be. Because with Tremors itself, I was familiar enough with it to know what it was,
You
and
know
that's
there was
strictly.
big worms, right?
I knew there were big worms, yes, and I knew, you know, as I said in my pre-intro, that I know that it's Kevin Bacon and the guy who played the dad in Jessica Biel's dad in Summer Catch, because I loved that movie when that one came out with Freddie Prinze Jr. And
Was that Fred Ward?
yeah,
Oh, I know
yeah.
Fred Ward from Remo Williams.
Nope.
Okay.
Guys, I gotta add that to the list. We're just growing my list day by day. But it's like I feel like everyone has that one movie that they absolutely. I honestly feel like for us maybe that could probably fall into like Big Trouble in Little China, because again it comes back into that campy practical effects, just kind of very John Carpenter kind of film. Another one kind of being They Live. Like I'll recommend it to people knowing that they may not like it, but if you want to understand me or understand my taste in some things, or and it took me a while to get this taste, but those are two films that I absolutely love and adore because of I'm a huge fan of practical effects, which is why I'm so glad you had me watch this movie, because I do think it holds up really well considering.
A lot of it, yeah.
There's maybe one scene that has some real bad CGI in it or real bad green screen. But for the most part, with at least definitely the first Tremors, maybe not so much Tremors 2, because you can see the bad CGI with it, but at least with the first.
Tried to do quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With puppeteering and stuff.
Yeah. But with the first one, the way that they did those puppets and the way that they did the practical effects with it, I think is just phenomenal and still holds up to this day.
Well, one of the things I thought was the most fun, I'm sure we'll dive into more details about the movie, but there's an instance in the first movie that takes place in a basement, and it was really done with a camera, like filming a miniature in a wall, and it was basically a hand puppet. It was like the graboid coming in through the wall and wrecking shop and stuff. It was all done in miniatures, but I grew up watching it having no idea.
Yeah. No, for sure. And kind of getting into that and talking about these moments, what are some of your favorite moments from Tremors and Tremors 2 now that I've seen it?
Well, I was preparing for this when I was looking over some of the questions you're going to be asking me, and a pretty consistent thing throughout this franchise is I like the juicy parts. Mm-hmm. Whenever it just rains orange goo. I'm in
like that whole part in Tremors 2 where they're just like having the graboids come up and eat the remote cars with the dynamite, and Fred Ward opens the first time they do it, and the umbrella opens for the first time first, and the other guy just doesn't get that.
Grady.
Yeah.
I love me some worm gore, so that's always fun. When they're at the edge of the cliff at the end and they kill the last graboid by just jumping out of the way, and the graboid just like suicide dives off the cliff and splatters on the rocks. That's good for me. But pretty much anytime Burt Gummer is shooting something, I'm having a good time. Burt Gummer is I'm bad with names, but the A.A. Chiefy guy from Jaws is Burt Gummer. Yeah. But I grew up in the 90s, so with this one being 1990, right?
1990. Yep. And then 96, I think, was Tremors 2.
Well, that's a bit of a gap. That's why Fred Ward looks a little bit older.
Yep.
But this was my Jaws. Tremors was my Jaws. That's what I grew up watching. Also, now I'm just realizing that Army of Darkness and Tremors came out in the same year, and that's rad as hell. So,
on a future episode, if you've never seen it, all the OG Evil Dead movies. No, I loved him too with Reba McEntire. and her just like spouting off gun names and just being so
You're not even
cool,
getting
calm.
penetration with the elephant gun.
I was like, she is badass. Like I feel like she knew more about everything that they had in that bunker basement than he did, but he was the one that talked all the game and was all, macho about it. But then I loved in Tremors too, when they call him and he shows up and he has like the tactical truck and all the explosives and everything, and he looks over and he goes, you had the Mexican government give you whatever you wanted and you chose a box of dynamite? It was like so disgusted.
He's so much fun. I believe was the second. I mean, we're talking about the first one, but I'm just trying to remember. One of the consistent themes that's brought up or quotes in every single Tremors movie is Burt Gummer saying, "I feel I was denied critical, need to know information."
Yes.
And that pops into my head at least once a day while I'm at work.
It's gonna be a new part of my verbiage in my repertoire when like things go wrong at work. It's like I was denied critical information. I think another one of the things I like about Tremors is, in order to keep the story going and to keep the suspense and keep it growing, is they give the graboids, like part of the whole thing is how they evolve.
Yeah.
Throughout
the
film. Yeah, they seem like just big dumb worms, and then it's like, oh no, now they're getting smart, and you're watching everyone panic trying to figure out
when they
what
bottom
to do.
out Chang's market and start selling it. By the way, Walter Chang, Victor Wong, the grandpa from Three Ninjas.
Yes, I love Victor Wong. He's amazing. I love him in that. When they were trying to when you have Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon like sitting all serious trying to figure things out, and Victor Wong is like having the one kid take pictures with like the piece of the tongue that they found.
Right, Melvin.
And like he just cares about like making a buck and like what we're gonna name them and like the scientific discovery from it.
Lest we forget, Walter Chang names the worms.
He does.
Graboids. Yeah.
That's what we'll call them. And they're like, we're a little busy right now, sir. And then he meets his demise at the hands of what? Spoilers. By the way, guys, spoilers. This is what's happening. Full spoiler review.
And as a young kid, that was relatively traumatizing because I didn't see a lot of like semi-gruesome deaths growing up, but we sure loved watching Tremors.
We sure, and I feel like there was a lot of similarities between that Victor Wong's death and the death you mentioned with Jaws with Robert Shaw as Quint, and how he gets eaten off of the boats. Yeah. With literally to a T. I feel like it was played really well. Just like
if you take the score from Jaws, Tremors is a scarier movie because how often are you in the water versus how often are you on soft ground?
That's a very fair point. One of my other favorite moments is when they first discover the graboids chasing after them and they're running away from it and go into like the ravine and it hits the stone and it dies, and Kevin Bacon just goes, I don't know if I'm sure. He's just, fuck you. Like just
it's very satisfying.
Kevin Bacon's one-liners in this, like when they see the geology students that's out there, and she's like, she can have blonde hair, big breasts,
and legs that go all the way up.
All the way up. Yeah.
She's like a kind of short brunette with like sunscreen stuff.
Yeah, it was exactly. Or then you have in Tremors 2, Fred Ward has Miss October 1974 on his wall as a reminder of things that he's never gonna he can't get, so it keeps him like grounded or realistic. I'm like, oh, what a terrible poor guy.
In the Graboid arcade game that he didn't get any royalties off of.
Yep, and now he's all how Kevin Bacon left him high and dry with that geology student.
Listen, for those of you that have never watched this movie, what are you doing?
Seriously, gold. There's gold in these there hills. in this.
Can I ask you a question? Maybe you've already covered it earlier before I came on here, but like, what were some of your expectations going into this? Because I kind of was just like Tremors, you have to watch it. Go.
Yeah, so my expectations with it were, I knew how much my husband loved it because, again, my experience is I'd come home and he might be watching it and I'll just go do something else because I had no desire to really sit down and watch it. So I was coming into it knowing that it was campy. There was some goose with it, that it's giant worms that eat people that come up from the ground, and that's thus the name Tremors. At least that's what I thought it was.
The charm, right?
I was not expecting the charm, and I was not expecting to really, really be rooting for Kevin Bacon.
For perfection.
For perfection.
Which, by the way, this movie took place 3 years before Jurassic Park, and it has Lex in it.
Oh, yeah.
The little girl is Lex from Jurassic Park.
Look at her fighting monsters through left and right, tricking graboids, and then going on to trick velociraptors. Good for her. Proud of her. Melvin is a little shit. Like,
you're gonna love the third one because both Mindy, I believe was her name, and Melvin both come back.
Melvin should have gotten eaten for all the shit he pulled. Is how I feel. Like.
Well, he lost his dad.
I know, the wrong one died. Should have been. They had no problem eating a kid in Jaws in the 70s. They could have eaten a kid in Tremors and been fine. They ate a lot of kids in Jaws.
I feel like he was doing his best Aliens impression. Like, the game over, man. He's like, no way, man. No way.
No way. No way. Should have gotten that. That's my only complaint. That keeps me from a 5-star review, is that Melvin didn't get his in the end. And I think just, kind of getting into like why I never watched it before is it just has never been on my radar, right? Like, I've always been, up until recently, just kind of a casual movie watcher. If something's coming out, I'm gonna go see it. Got more into, the MCU and Marvel films and things like that over my relationship with my now husband. So he's kind of helped open up my ideas on film and what to watch. My favorite movie of all time is Casablanca. So I have a wide plethora of what I will watch and what I enjoy. And honestly, horror's never been at the top of my list. I don't like being scared. It's not my thing. I blame my dad for taking me when I was 5 to go see Ernest Scared Stupid. And I've never watched it again since because it scared the shit out of me. A little 5-year-old Allison watching an Ernest movie scared the hell out of me. So the idea of anything horror related has never really been at the top of my list. But with that kind of being said, finding out and understanding that this is more, it's horror, but it's that, with that comedy aspect of it, I'm like, I get a little bit more open to it. Once I started understanding, what's going on and what we're seeing and what we're doing, and the gore itself is not as bad as what I thought it was going to be. It's more, again, that practical effect, that campy horror, like, here's some legs that were left, here's some brains that were left of this construction worker kind of thing. I think the most gore you get is more so from the graboids themselves over actual people.
And I would argue that this is basically just Jurassic Park with worms. And if you can hang with Jurassic Park, where you have Samuel L. Jackson's arm, touch Laura Dern.
Yeah.
Same stuff.
What else was there in Jurassic? Oh, when he gets eaten off the toilet. That's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
Where the T-Rex just gets that one. I love when people who are pieces of shit get theirs. And that guy, I did not like him. And he got eaten by a T-Rex and he deserved it.
Yeah, and I think your biggest problem with this movie is the one person that actually was a piece of shit was fine.
Didn't get it. Made me so mad.
And that poor couple just minding their business out there, get swallowed with their whole Jeep.
Trying to keep their kids safe, and Melvin just out there fucking with everybody. And at least we now know that this is going to be an explicit podcast, by the way. At least we know now.
Well, actually,
now.
well, no, I think you hit 2, so now it has to be an R-rated podcast. If you
It
kept
has to
it to
be.
1, it would just be PG-13.
Can't. Sorry. I know. Talking about
Parental
just
advisory.
kind of talk about another thing. Ratings. Tremors was rated PG-13.
Was it?
I believe it was, and it was, but they got their one big FU in it with Kevin Bacon yelling it at the graboid. I'm pretty sure, yeah, PG-13. Which there you go, pushing that rating lines.
Which had only been around for about 4 or 5 years as a rating by the time that came out.
So that's kind of, I feel like this is probably one of those movies I was like just kind of pushing that rating. But then the following, you know what's so crazy, and with realizing this is the following year was Jurassic Park. When you right, like Jurassic Park was 91, no 93, so 3 years after. 93. I was like, yeah. So just I mean, talk about if I'm gonna say Steven Spielberg, hot take. Steven Spielberg ripped off Tremors.
Yes, absolutely. I think if there's anything we could take away, he clearly watched Tremors and said, "Is there anything akin to this? Maybe based off some source material that I could take and do my best to do."
You know what's scarier than Tremors? Than them giant worms? Dinosaurs. And then I can be Steven Spielberg and do it that much better because I'll get more money.
So, I think, and I always throw people off of this because I feel like reboots are a constant conversation, right, in the space. Everyone talks about what should be rebooted, what shouldn't be, or should nothing be rebooted. I understand that they just had like a 6th sequel like a year or 2 ago, but let me get an honest to God, keep it in the B movie creature feature category, but like let me get a Tremors reboot.
I would love a Tremors reboot. I would love for like Kevin Bacon and the geologist's kid to like go back to perfection and not even remake it, but do like the legacy sequel, like a real legacy sequel, and like have Melvin still being there, like being the little shit that he is, but now he's a grown-up little shit that is like telling Tremors the stories.
Well, he's not telling the stories, but he's pretty grown up in the 3rd one. Well, what a lot of people probably don't know is Kevin Bacon and some other people submitted a pilot to Sci-Fi.
Yes, Frank told me that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I meant to go and watch it before we started recording this, but I didn't. But it's so funny because talking with Frank, but also talking with good, friend of the show, the first episode, PJ Campbell. Talking with him about
That's one of the first things me and PJ bonded over. That's when we started talking.
Was Tremors?
Yeah, it was Tremors.
Yeah. Frank is of the camp that he's really annoyed that Sci-Fi never, or any other channel never picked up the show. Meanwhile, PJ's on the other end saying, "No, I'm glad they didn't, because if you watch that trailer, if you're going to make a show about it, it didn't follow the same rules as all the films, so it felt like more of a revisionist kind of thing." So it's it feels like I have my husband and my friend on very opposite ends of the spectrum of where the show should have been. What are your thoughts on it?
I have a hard time taking the Tremors timeline that seriously. But,
have you met PJ Campbell?
God bless.
I love PJ so much. We love you, PJ. We'll see you soon.
I mean, I can't expect the Tremors timeline to take their chronologically more seriously than X-Men, so...
My favorite thing about all of those movies, though, especially like those X-Men movies and just Marvel in general, is now they're just at a point where, like, if the storyline just gets too out of control, they just do a time travel thing and just pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
Like so Days of Future Past, that's how it ended. Like, it was just like, oh, this never happened. We're fine.
Now we just need some time traveling graboids.
Yeah. Multiverse, Tremors 7, Multiverse of Graboids.
Yeah, yeah. So the original question was,
how do you feel about the TV show not getting picked up?
Oh, now I remember where I was going. Yeah. I would have loved to see it because Kevin Bacon is one of the characters that has never returned. Fred Ward has his one return. Michael Gross is in all of them, and then Mindy and Melvin show up in another one. But But there was a Tremors TV show that did exist for a whole season, and Christopher Lloyd was one of the main characters of the show.
Stop it, really?
I'm so serious. I
No
watched the
way.
entire season, and it's like not. It's called Tremors, and it takes place, I think, still in Perfection, but it is a monster show. Like it's all this other weird crap happening in Perfection with like different monsters, and it feels like Ghostbusters in Perfection, and with Christopher Lloyd, and it's a blast.
I'd be okay. Well, now I have to go look that up. That's fun. Um, it's so funny too. Like looking at Ron Underwood and what he did. So Tremors was his first theatrical film. Going through this IMDb. Other movies that Ron Underwood has done include Mighty Joe Young, big gorilla movie,
Classic.
City Slickers, and The Adventures of Pluto Nash. The only one of those three I have seen is Mighty Joe Young. And then he goes and he does a bunch of like,
Hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that.
no, he's done a bunch of like TV movies. Like he did a bunch of like what I would call the ABC Family or whatever that channel is called now. Christmas movies. He also apparently he directed 2 episodes of MacGyver, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, he not very much not a very storied film career from our friend Ron Underwood apparently.
Well, you know how Ron Underwood makes his big comeback in Hollywood, right? Reboots the franchise.
Reboots Tremors. So Ron,
Reboots Tremors, yeah.
if you're listening, if you are listening to this podcast right now, we implore you, please, let's do a reboot.
Ron Underwood, a great friend of the show whose name I hadn't heard until today. Please reboot Tremors.
so we can go and see it. But yeah, no, my immediate first watch thoughts was I was very happy that it was 90 minutes. I have a lot of movies.
It's crisp, it's
and
clean,
it really does, and it moves. Yes, great pacing. I got a lot of movies I have to watch that I'm pretty sure are not going to have that
I
same
need you to
great
watch The
pacing.
Irishman next.
No, that is on the very, very short list of probably do not care to watch. But like I said, and like we talked about, I think with the way that they did the practical effects of it all, because again, I'm a sucker for the only reason I sat through and watched John Carpenter's The Thing with how spooky and scary it was, I watched it because of how much I heard about and was told about the practical effects that go along with it and how ahead of its time it was for when it was made. And you watch something like that and you see how practical effects can be done. And then you watch a movie like Tremors made in 1990 where these practical effects are done well and hold up well. It's almost kind of in my head, I get very frustrated watching movies where that is just full of love Star Wars.
Here's a hot take. Tremors has aged better than The Phantom Menace. I said it.
I was going to say, like, when George Lucas discovered that he could go back and put CGI in all of his stuff, I was like, but why? It was fine how it was. It didn't need...
that's a side topic, but Empire Strikes Back benefited and the other two suffered. That's how that worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the practical effects. They did start using some CGI as the series went on, but I feel like a lot tried to stick to doing as much practical as possible.
Absolutely. And I understand like budgets and money and what it costs and, this, that, and the other, but still, like when CGI is bad, it's bad. Like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, him on that broomstick shouldn't have been that bad.
Their budget grew as they went.
It sure did.
Man, okay, now I remember. Not to spoil things that may possibly come. I mean, this is your show, so I don't want to. But I know something that you are going to watch in the near future, possibly bits of a franchise, and I think you will also again be pleasantly surprised. by how much practical effects there is and how much that director is hell-bent on building things and using makeup, and sometimes it looks a little silly, but it makes it so much more tangible.
Yeah.
And I will always take tangible over sloppy CG, because like even if you look at it and you're like, okay, that doesn't look quite real, I'd rather have something that's a little uncanny valley physically than cartoon.
I prefer the 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies because of the puppeting and the costumes over what came out in the late 2000s or late 2010s.
16, I think, was the first one.
Yeah,
14,
so
14 and 16.
When I just love the look of those puppets and the costumes and the effects that go along with it, and it's so fun, not just with the turtles, but in The Secret of the Ooze, when you kind of get Bebop and Rocksteady, but not really, because they don't call them that.
Well, it's Tokar and Razor.
Yeah.
Or Toka and Razor.
Yeah.
I have something you're gonna love.
Okay.
So I had pleaded with my sister for like 3 months to watch Dune. You know how big of a fan I am of the Dune franchise, or franchise, but Dune as an IP, whatever. So she finally sat down and watched it, and she messages me, and my sister's like 36 probably. So yeah, I don't know. She's older than me, but she said, I watched Dune. I was like, oh great, what'd you think? She's like, I liked how Tremors-y it was, and I was like, that's the entire takeaway of Dune. Wow.
Was the one giant sandworm.
I failed as a brother somewhere along the line. But that proves my point then, that I said that I'm the oddball of the family.
Right.
You know, there's limited film knowledge. So when I show somebody something that is a beautiful masterpiece like Dune, and they come at me with, no, it's very Tremors-like.
Yeah. It's like, well, he'll understand what I mean. Meanwhile, with my mom, when she's like, oh, what did you guys go see? What did you watch? I tell her, she goes, oh, I go, yeah, you would hate it. With pretty much everything. Or the other joke that we made was, I'm going to have her on an episode of You've Never Seen It, but we're going to talk about a movie that we saw together that she just doesn't remember.
That sounds like a blast. Audio listeners, I had to kick my cat out of the room. I'm sorry.
It's so great. So yeah, so that's gonna be our bonus content. Is there's gonna be, if we get big enough to have like a bonus secret episode drop once a month, it'll be You've Never Seen It with my mom, where we have seen it and I'm explaining to her what the movie is and when we went to go see it.
That's really fun.
Because my mom is a gem. Yeah, so kind of with that, I think we kind of get to, we're at kind of like the last little bit of this where give our final reviews. So Jesse, on 1 to 5 stars, your final reviews of Tremors and how you feel about it.
Can I give 2 separate numbers?
Absolutely.
This gets a 5 out of 5 graboids of nostalgia for me. And that is a never changing, unrelenting rating. As an actual film, it's, I'm gonna give it still like, it's a 3.8. It's a cohesive story. It's entertaining. The comedy's good. It's got some talent. It's also has Reba McEntire. But I think it's almost a 4-quadrant film. Maybe not for your small children, but I feel like anyone can watch this and enjoy it and be entertained, root for the good guys, classic storytelling. And it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
I love that. No. Fantastic. Yeah, I think and kind of getting into my ratings is I'm looking at it from a 5 out of 5 stars, or like the star rating based off of for what it is. Like Tremors going up against one of it's gonna be, you're getting for based off of what Tremors is versus what, like, it's not, I'm not a movie critic.
Tremors gets a higher rating than Godfather for me. I'll be the one to say it.
Like, I'll be the one to say it. We'll just throw it up. But like, you know, to each their own is masterpieces of cinema.
And spoiler alert, next time Allison chooses to grace me with an invitation onto the show, I will be going down a list of Adam Sandler movies and whether or not she has seen them.
This is going to be so much fun. I can't wait for the Happy Madison miniseries to come. But also, chances are I have seen a lot of them.
Okay, I was going to say we're going to hit 4 or 5 one episode. It's going to be great. And your brain's going to be...
We're going to get there eventually.
I'm sorry. You were rating the movie before I rudely interrupted you.
No, I think that for Tremors, marked it off of my watch list just now on Letterboxd because that's what I'm going off of. I would say for its effects, I loved it. The story itself, I love a good simple story. Time is a huge thing for me. Not that it doesn't bother me when a movie is longer. Like I have friends who think that if a movie is less than 2 hours, it's not technically, they don't think of it as a good movie. They're crazy. Whatever. I don't know. He won't be on the show, but he knows who he is. He'll end up listening.
Army of Darkness is less than 90 minutes. I'll let you know right now.
Yeah. Right. But anyway, but also I know for a fact that there's some movies that I'm going to be watching that are 3+ hours that I probably, even no matter how good they are, I probably won't plan on going back and watching them again anytime soon because it takes time. Right. Like I watched
you could be watching 2 Tremors movies.
I could be watching 3 at that point if I really wanted to get there. So I love the fact that it's 90 minutes and it's 90 minutes well paced. It's fun. I love the cheesy one-liners. I love the action with it. Melvin's a little shit and should have gotten it instead of his dad. But with that being said, I'm gonna rate Tremors 4.5 stars. I think, for what it is. Again.
Oh my gosh.
What I do? But yeah. What? Huh?
You didn't do anything. It was just this bonding experience.
Bonding. Are we best friends? Did we become best friends again?
Yes. Did we just become best friends? You want to go watch Tremors?
I love it. So yeah, no, there we go. Tremors 4.5 stars on Letterboxd for me. I think it, like I said, I had a blast with this film, and I'm really glad that this is what we chose to be this inaugural episode of You've Never Seen It.
I offer you something unique, special to me, but fun. I didn't want to torture you. You know, like I think you told me you wanted to get around to watching the Robert Eggers movies, right?
I do. I would like to.
Part of me wanted to say Lighthouse because it's an experience, but I think for a first episode, I want to give you something fun, fluffy, and enjoyable.
It's like, here, let's go watch Schindler's List to kick off this podcast. I'm waiting to see which one of my friends is going to be monstrous enough to make me watch that. I'm waiting for it. Someone's going to. I'm gonna have to nip it at some point, but I appreciate.
All right, you ready to watch Detroit? Let's go.
Yeah, Mr. Holland's Opus. Like, let's get real depressing. But with that, Jesse, you got where can the fine friends that I have listening to this podcast, all probably 7 of them,
well, hostile takeover of the creator of Flick and Reel here. Hey, Flickin' Fanatics, it is I, Jesse Swift, founder of the Flick and Reel Fancast, but not the brainchild behind this program. That is all Allison Salamone, so make sure that you also follow her. I'm sure she'll give you the credentials. But you can find me by looking up on Twitter, either Flick and Reel Fancast or at Jesse Swift. You can also find us on YouTube, and you do Flick-N-Reel, and that's spelled R-E-E-L. There's also Instagram that we're on sometimes, but pretty much just go online, type in Flick and Reel, but also anywhere that you listen to your audio podcast, whether that be Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Radiocast. Like, if you listen to a podcast, you can probably find Flick and Reel on there. So for SoundCloud's lame.
Awesome. And if you enjoy what you are hearing, please subscribe, rate, and review on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on. If you are listening to this on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment. Let me know what you hope to see is on my list and what we're going to be coming up with next. And if you subscribe on the YouTube channel, hit that little bell to get the notifications for whenever we go live or a new episode drops. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow the show on Twitter, more importantly, at Never Seen It FN, letter NR. You can follow me at Allison Salamone as well. And until next time, my friends, be safe and please go watch some movies.
And keep it real.
And keep it real.